Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Julia and this is a library card education. This is a viewer requested book list. It is also going to be a very long book list. This is for ancient history. So we are going to cover Egypt, Roman Greco, Chinese, Arabia, Persia, and parts of US ancients, Celtic. I don't really have anything on Norse. I, for some reason, just didn't think about getting it until this morning. So feel free to look at what your library offers for Norse history, N-O-R-S-E, Norse history. And I'm also going to start this by reading off some notes that I've made on stickies, just things for you to keep in mind for those of you that are looking to make courses, especially for your high schoolers. So math honors, if you want to do an honors course with your children, especially for geometry, but specifically trigonometry on up, you could have your child chart the mathematical equations and distances between stars, so their angles within the constellations and mythology books. You could have them build to scale these ancient structures, so find their measurements and then actually appropriately scale them down, have them show the equations for scaling, have them write out the different scales, however it is that they're going to use it on paper or their board, whatever it is. And that can be an honors to add for honors credit. And then honors literature will be very easy to get with this one. You could make a subcategory for honors world lit or world poetry, ancients poetry. I only have a few ancients books here. One specifically is for poetry, but you could probably try to find some more if that was a particular interest of your child. You could do a world religions credit, or you could add on an honors credit for world geography and use world religions as a part of that. So you could dissect, compare, and contrast different world religions. What else do we have here? The honors credits that you could very easily get would be geography, world history, ancients. I will show you a couple of books that you could do for honors economics or consumer math. Get creative. I said honors math earlier, so you could do that as well. And then any of these credits, depending on if you want it honors or non-honors, you want it a part of your regular repertoire of high school credits, or you can make many elective credits. You could, oh my gosh, so easily get a half credit to a full credit. Some of these you could probably do ancients and do a 2-year credit with all of these if you wanted to. You could get credits in Eastern and Chinese art. You could do credits in art history. I will show you several books for that. You could do world art history. You could do ancient art history. You could do a general art history. So many things depending on your child's very specific interests. So don't feel like you have to pay for CMEC or all of these other Charlotte Mason programs that want you to buy their units, buy their manuals. You do get lesson plans with that, but with this, what I'm going to show you, you can build it very specifically for your child's interests, for your family's interests, and you can just run with it and get everything from the library and just spend your time. That's all it's going to cost you. Have your high school student do some papers, build some models, paint, write their own poetry. The world is your oyster. So many options. So after that introduction, I'm going to ask that you be patient. This is going to be really long. And I've tried to organize everything the best I can, but my entire living room is taken up with books. And then you'll see this mess over here. My little son has decided that mom is not his one and only favorite thing anymore. So he's got a pile of toys over here, and I'm not going to clean it up because that's my saving grace when I need a few minutes of sanity. So you'll just have to look at my messy house corner. And let's get started. Let's start with just a general ancient histories list. I will forewarn you, there are going to be about 15 to 20 books total throughout this whole book that came from my personal collection, but most of them I have bought from our library sales within the last couple of years when they have removed almost full sections like ancient Greece. I've seen some people in the comments say that they were having a hard time finding books for ancient Greece because that seems to be a genre that is being culled. I have some suspicions on that one because it doesn't go along with our modern tastes. We have to do the all Western civilization thing is bad. So I will point those books out for you in a few minutes. If you are somebody that's wanting a spine for all of your children, whether you're Catholic, Protestant, whatever you are, secular, you could go with Genevieve Foster's. I have seen this on Catholic lists, so if they can do it, why can't we? This is a first edition copy. You can find reprints for on eBay like 10 bucks. So they're pretty easy to score. Here's some of your pictures. So yeah, you're gonna get into the mythology gods and demons that we would call them in Christianity. But this is a really good book. Use that with your history timeline, your book of centuries, and there you go. Here's your spine if you want one. This is a book of pyramids from my personal collection, and it goes over the pyramids of all of these cultures from around the world. Where's the author's name? Oh, it's Kingfisher, so it's like a Kingfisher encyclopedia-ish sort of thing. Here's a timeline, picture timeline of ancient worlds. DK Books, and this is all from our local library. So it'll take you through beginning cultures and civilizations and all the way through your ancients. This is a fun art book. It has art in various styles. It is for your pre-readers through elementary, even up to your high schoolers. I know my 8th grader still likes looking at these books sometimes. And this is called Catnap. So let's see here. So Egyptian Antiquities at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So and then it goes into other styles. You've got medieval, classical, sketch, hieroglyphs. It covers all of it if you are into the art history. For your child that you want to build structures with, add to your science or math credits. So it goes through all the different types of structures throughout history. Secrets of the Dead, mummies and other human remains from around the world. If you've got a macabre sort of child like I have. Lost cities throughout the world. So you'll get into city of Alexandria as well. Now this is not ancients specifically, but it goes, she travels to places that you would find for ancients, like the pyramids, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, etc. And this is just a fun one from James Mayhew. I always recommend his books, especially if you're wanting to do art study with your younger children. So here's your map. Hot air balloon travels to places all around the world. Again, math credit, junior high to high school. Lost Worlds. This is by an illustrator, an author illustrator that illustrated Lord of the Rings, some of their works. So, I mean, this is an absolutely beautiful book. Middle school, high school, all of your Lost Worlds. An excellent way to make an honors credit. This goes over ancient to medieval to modern castles. So something like David Macaulay but throughout all time periods. These next two books are for war. So it gives you your Celtic and your ancient. Celtic is kind of like at the end of the ancients. So I'm putting it in here just because it can kind of go in between depending on what it is that you want to study and how. Oh my gosh. And this beast. Okay. And now for your chapter books for general history. The Seven Wonders of the Ancient World. I have this marked. Why did I mark this? So, to show you. It gives you all of the facts. So easy to add this for math honors credit. Possibly physics, depending on how you would use that too. This looks like a fun one. Not all of these books have I been able to research because I'm talking about well over 100 books in the last 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks that I've been collecting. Just haven't had the time for it. So for your children, always preview or research. I've done the best that I can to weed out the ones that I think would be most problematic, but they always slip in. If you have a child that likes to do coding or breaking codes or hacking, this might be a fun one to make a honors credit or just a general read on. So it's kind of a glare. Can you see that better? So it's called Code Breakers. And here's another note. These next two books you could add to your economy or consumer maths for an honors credit. I would just maybe try to find one other book in your library that discusses some of these things, and it would be quite easy to do. And you would study the history of money globally as well as within the USA. You could do Wall Street, you could do stock market, you could do World Economic Forum, especially if you want to get into the little conspiracy side of things. Very easy to find all the information on that. So we're going to go, the first book is The History of Money. It's a very sizable book. And this book is not related to ancients, but that would be more for someone in my region. So I'm Wisconsin. So if you're in this area or you're just, your child's interested in farming or how modern economy is working with subsidies. Oh, thunder. And as always, I like to put costuming and fashion into my videos because there's inevitably always some girl that's girly and loves to look at those things. And here you go. And this gives you, in addition to if you've watched my other videos, you can find the DK encyclopedias of all of the visual. This gives you actual history behind everything. And there's even some patterns that you could expand, make your own, recreate. So you want to talk about having a year-long history credit, or I'm sorry, year-long elective credit, or even a half a credit, depending on what you wanted your child to do with this. Very easy. All right, that's it for that segment. Let's get into the few books that I have for North America. And I'm going to add my warning here. I'm not doing North America or South America generally, just because with what is available at libraries today tends to go along with the Western civilization is bad sort of influence, and I won't bring those into my home. If that's something you don't mind and you like, you will find a plethora of that from picture books on up. But if you're not wanting to do that with your children, it's gonna be a hard press. But I did find this and it's fun. You could dive into the conspiracy theories if you want. And we had an incident here in Wisconsin where the University of Madison was actually out digging and they found the bones of a giant civilization in our state. And the Smithsonian and some government agencies came in, I have no idea when this was, maybe in the last 10 years, came in, confiscated the site, roped it off, had it protected by either federal agents or state police, would not let anybody in, would not let anybody take pictures or continue their excavations, and they took everything. And we don't know where it is. And that's quite literally true history. And you'll find that happening all over the world, including in places like Iraq and Iran. So Afghanistan, the Gulf War, that was quite popular in the Gulf War, as well as the 2002, 2003 time period. So you can get into all of that stuff if you want to. And this was a book that I was just given this past weekend, and I figured it went well with this. So Wisconsin state history, but also ancient Indian history. And for your little ones, if you can find it, it is expensive, but it's a fun book. Holling See Holling, the Indians. And now it's not really ancient, but it's just fun. It goes over all of the territories of the United States and the tribes that lived within those boundaries. Okay, now let's do our Celtic and British sort of region. You can find DVDs. You can find them on YouTube. You can find them from PBS. You can probably even get Amazon Prime if you have Amazon Prime. A whole selection for those. St. Patrick. So that would be the Roman Empire into Great Britain. We have this. Now I'm showing you this because there are going to be, when you're studying the ancient art and tribes, you're going to have depictions. So you know what, maybe I probably just put a sticky on that part too. This is a lady whose unmentionables are shown, especially in this area, with pretty good detail. So just make sure you're checking things out, putting stickies where they need to go, or deciding they may not be best for your family. But that's what we had about the Druids in our library. Ancient Celtics. You can also find mythology books for Celtic mythology. It'd be a great time to add Celtic music for music study. There's lots of that on YouTube, so free resources. Your library should have Celtic DVDs. You could do Irish dance that's not really ancient, but if you wanted to kind of jazz it up and make it fun. The Edge of the Empire. And this is a journey to Britannia from the heart of Rome to Hadrian's Wall. And this one is walking the Great North Line from Stonehenge to, oh gosh, Lindisfarne. I apologize to anybody living in England. So my note here was research. Oh, I don't know why I put that in there. I don't know, but here's an interesting diagram. Don't know what I was thinking when I made that note though. And for your youngers, Leif the Lucky. If you have a book on St. Brendan, if you're Catholic, you can add that into this time period as well. St. Bridget would also be a really good study for that time period too. And I think this book goes into some of the saints, and they have a secular view. They call the saints mythology. People that were actually alive, born, they call them mythology. So that's your choice on how you want to approach that with your children. We are now going to go into the smaller ancients. Get this out of the way. Mesopotamia. This was very sparse at my library, but it's something. I highlighted something here. What did I highlight? Oh, so you could see how it's being guarded by the military. What I just said a few minutes ago about the military swooping in 2002, 2003. This is a picture from that time period. And them taking, yep, guarding in the Museum of Iraq. So they're taking things. All sorts of stuff you can find online if you want to dig into that. And we are going to go out of that and segue into Persia, since that picture was Iraq. Here is, let me do the picture books real quick. Again, a very, very small section in our library. You can do the story of Esther and the Phoenix of Persia. And for your chapter books, oh no, hold on. Oh, I left one book out from before, A Sumerian Slave. I don't think I showed that one. Okay, now back to the chapter books. This is a big, thick one. Looks like a very interesting read. I don't know the author's perspective, but it's the history of Iraq. Very, very cool. And it wouldn't be complete without Arabian Nights. So if you are a family that watches Disney or some Disney movies, maybe you want to watch Aladdin or go into the Tales of Aladdin. We don't watch the Disney Aladdin one because I find it to be a little immodest, but you could do there's all sorts of things you can get for that. Plays, all of it for Arabian Nights, Aladdin sort of thing. And this is Walking to Samarkand, the Great Silk Road from Persia to Central Asia. And this will take us into our next area of the world, and we're going to study Asia. A lot of China, some Japan. I don't have India in here just because what my library was, what they had on stock was all about their gods and goddesses, and I just found that to be very creepy. So we're kind of staying away from India, but if your library has it, look into it if that's what you want to do. And this is a big stack, so I'm going to start with a few of the chapter books, and then we'll get into the others. A short history of China. This looked interesting. I just found this yesterday. So I haven't had a chance to preview it. I can't tell you much about it, but I thought maybe you could go through this. And the general sense of this is they're saying that the Chinese were the ones to discover all of the parts of the world, including the US. So it's coming from a Chinese colonization sort of perspective. Keeping with ancient China, we are going to go into ancient dog breeds. My favorite dog breed, I've had 4, and they are a heartbreak breed. I've lost 2 of the 4 very early at 5 years of age. But these are Shar-Peis. And they were used in ancient times for hunting, war, boar, some bear, and they were also used in war. And they are used now in parts of the world, Middle East, especially for, sadly, dog fighting because they're wrinkles. It's gross, but that's what they use them for. Love this breed. So if you have an animal lover or a dog lover, this is a great way to study the history of a dog breed. In the 1970s, Betty White went on a campaign to get information out about the Chinese Shar-Pei because there were only 36 to 37 dogs left in the world of this breed. And since then, they've come back in, but because of the way that they were bred, they're very, very susceptible to diseases and early death. So kind of an interesting little jaunt. This next one, you could study the history of his Mercury River and then research for your older students, research the chemistry of mercury, the effects on the body for human development, so in utero, mercury exposure from fillings, cracked fillings, fish, all of that stuff. And then you can also research Mad Hatter syndrome. That's a fun one. And then watch or read Alice in Wonderland. Oh, and that reminds me, while doing some research, I found Princess Bride, And someone wrote an article saying that they believe that Princess Bride was written as an allegory or a way to retell ancient history. So you might want to look into that with your child, especially if they love Princess Bride, you love Princess Bride. That might be kind of a fun tie-in. So you choose for the Great Wall of China, Mulan, ancient activities for ancient China, the Magic Horse of Han Gan. I think I'm saying that right. I'm not even gonna try that name. I'll murder it. The next 3 books are on Mount Everest. They're not about ancient Mount Everest, but it's just if you want to add some for geography. And this goes into different places around the world, but Everest is included. You can watch various YouTube videos about all of the hikers that passed away on the mountain and how they're still there, recovery efforts, the history of the people that live there, the trail guides for Everest. There's a whole bunch of study. You can go into that for this. If you like Mr. Ballin, Mr. Ballin has some Mount Everest episodes. I don't recommend those for young children. Demi, love her books. You can study silkworms and silk. You can study different products that are made from silk. You could study the textiles industry from silk, especially fashion, again, adding into the fashion component. You could study the life cycle of a silkworm. You can, or silk moths. You can study the dyeing process and the ancient dyeing processes versus today. So many things you can do with that. You could even get into the history of concubines, if that's something you want to do within the ancient Asians and the dynasties. And did you know that not all concubines were female? So, interesting. So here we go. Here's another one of those books. This is specifically the Great Wall of China through its history. And then you have these little things that you find in the book. Kind of like a Where's Waldo, but Great Wall of China. A second one of those, and this is just Chinese history timeline from ancients to modern. That was kind of halfway through the book. To what China would look like today. For your art credit or your art lover, if you really wanted to make this into a Charlotte Mason, you could study and listen to Chinese music. If you're Catholic, you can find on YouTube, I just found it within the last couple months, it's beautiful. The Hail Mary sung in Chinese, absolutely beautiful. Now, it's not ancient history, that'd be more modern, early 1900s, but you could also look into Our Lady of China. But you can do Chinese brush painting. So much fun. So here's the back cover. This is not Chinese, this is Japanese, and it is more modern 1800s, but we lack a lot in our resources for Japanese, and it's beautiful. It kind of fits that whole art theme, the Asian art theme, if that's what you want to do. Hokusai, the Great Wave. Our library has a couple of children's biographies on him. So if your library doesn't have this specific one, there are some more. And it's just a beautiful children's book with his art. And if you have children you can trust to not rip and damage very expensive books, this is a book that used to be in general circulation in our library, and they've taken it out of general circulation. You have to have approval now to get it. And so this one is fun. It is a pop-up. All the different things that you could study, the Japanese elements, cooking, the history of their costuming, same with Chinese, the history of their costuming. There's so many things. Their economy, what they were producing in ancient times, where they explored their rivalry between China and Japan, and then eventually China, Japan, and the region of North Korea, South Korea, when it was more in the Chinese domain. You could study all of that. Back to China, Chinese culture. Not exactly a riveting book, but if you're just wanting for pictures, that'll work for you. You could learn how to write. Is it called script? I forget what their letters are called, but you could have your children write their name, learn to write their name with their symbols in Chinese or Japanese. You can study ancient art. This book is kind of it's a little drab book, but I got it out just in case to show you the different options. Black and white. But this one, that the library finally was able to get for me. This one's a little bit more interesting. And so beautiful pictures in this. And while this is Chinese, you can look up Japanese art. What's it called? I forget the name of it offhand, but it has like a little proverb to go with it. They use broken teacups. So if you have these beautiful china and your teacup gets broken, they used to kind of glue them back together with gold solder, and it would make art. And it was a symbolization to show that you might be broken, but even from brokenness, beauty comes. So you can study something like that, and you can make teapot art. You can find old dishes from the resale shop that you don't mind busting up, bust them up and glue them together and make a hodgepodge or bird feeders or something, and kind of take it in that direction. I'm giving you guys all these ideas and I don't even do half of them, so don't feel like you have to. And the last thing for China and Asia is ancient poetry from China, Japan, and India. So it's a plain cover, and let me see who the author is. Henry Wells. Ancient Poetry from China, Japan, and India from Henry Wells. All right, are you still hanging on? We're 33 minutes in. Let's do, oh gosh, we're only halfway through. Let's do Egypt. We're gonna start with a series of books for your young kids from Tommy DePaulo. It's the Bill and Pete series. Fun books. Hatshepsut. This was discarded from our library in the last couple of years. Put that over there since that's mine. Oh, sorry. Wrong book pile. Temple Cat, this one's also mine. And this goes into how ancient Egyptian culture revered and even worshipped cats. If you have an animal lover, the pictures are absolutely beautiful. another book I absolutely love. It makes me cry every time I read it, but it goes into the story of a queen with real hieroglyphs. And at the end, you could study the hieroglyphs with your children and then try to find them throughout the story. And then you will learn to tell the story through hieroglyphs. And it does that with each page. So it's Mummy Cat. Love this book. So like here's a hieroglyph that's hiding, and there's another one. And it will tell you at the end of the book what those hieroglyphs actually mean. Love this book so much. Is this my copy? No, it's the library's copy. Okay. Keeping on that theme, cat mummies. The process, why, and how. It goes into the history that if there was a fire or another calamity, they would collect any of the cats that they could to try to save them because they were considered gods, and how it came to be that cats were considered gods. Getting into Cleopatra. I'm not going to do a lot on Cleopatra just because that's a lot. There's always a lot of information about her, but it's a very easy tie into your Greek history, ancient history. She was Greek. Some people don't know that. And this is fun. This is written through the perspective of one of her servants' diaries, her diary logs. I don't know if that's like an actual diary or if they're just telling the story through what would have been a diary. Keeping with hieroglyphs, we have a couple of stories on those. This is more of an information code breaker, again, if you have a child that loves coding. This is a biography on who deciphered the codes, the hieroglyphs. I read this several years ago. Don't remember much detail, but it is a good book. Of course, Demi. If you've never seen one of her books. She has a very similar art style through all of her books. This is about what you would have to go through to become an Egyptian princess and what would happen at the end of your reign. All that information. "100 ancient Egyptian jobs you might have dreaded or desired." I have another book like that. "Be a scribe working for a better life in ancient Egypt." So the various jobs you can do. "The Unofficial Guide to the Ancient Egyptian Afterlife." So it gets into their gods, the religion, the whole cat thing, tombs, the mummy makers of Egypt, how they did it. As a kid, I always found that subject fascinating, and watching the diagrams. There's books when I was a kid where they actually drew out what it looked like when they pulled the brain out. Oh, so gross. So, I don't know, maybe you could find something like that. An accounting book for your little ones. 10 Little Mummies. science, technology of ancient Egypt. And how they made structures, all sorts of things. This has recently come back into publication, so our library has a newer copy of this, which is this one. You can find them used now. I think it's Purple House Press that republished this. I could be wrong. But it was unavailable for a long time and it was very expensive. David Macaulay. Getting into the religion studies. How the Sphinx came to the museum. So this gets into how museums throughout Europe confiscated artifacts and brought them to their museums. And I wanted to make a note. You could also, I linked it on my New York City video. So if you go back and watch that, or at least look at the description, there's a link that gets into some of the obelisks from ancient Egypt and how it's linked to Freemasonry. You can see the obelisks that they took from ancient Egypt and even brought here to the United States. So that's an interest to you. Look at that. Miss Frizzle, so your magic school bus, but for geography and history, ancient Egypt. They do have one for Imperial China. I could not find mine and the library couldn't get me their copy in time. So you'll have this one and you'll have Imperial China. So it's written in magic school bus form. But you're studying the history. This is a nice book. I really like this one. So it's a DK book. There's the title more specifically. So you get into your family trees, events, beer, bread, and grit, or bread, beer, and grit. And I had said in one of my videos before that the ancient Egyptians had high levels of diabetes. I don't know if this book goes into it, but that's why, because they ate a lot of bread and drank a lot of beer, and most everybody, even though they weren't large, they were diabetic. So that could be a fun study, especially if you have a child that wants to go into nursing or medicine. You can study ancient medicine. You can study ancient cultures with regards to that, ancient diseases. Oh, and I forgot my daughter's book downstairs. There's a chapter book called Pharaoh's Tick, as in like, you know, the bitey ticks that try to kill you. Pharaoh's Tick. And it talks about ancient bugs and diseases from ancient Egypt. And I had to buy that book. The library doesn't have it. But again, Pharaoh's Tick. And let's keep going with, now we're going to get into chapter books. And I have a big stack of some of these things as well as some art. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Your library should have this one. And you may have seen this one on other lists. But it's a pretty easy find. It's a fun book. That's my book though. A you choose sort of history for ancient history or ancient Egypt. History Smashers graphic novels. So it's got some chapter book and some graphic novel. I think they have some color ones, but I could be wrong. And so I wanted to make a note of this one. You could easily earn a half to 1 full credit of foreign language if you let your child read this one and actually work on printing and deciphering and translating various texts, their names, colors, foods, whatever. Hieroglyphs. Wouldn't that be a fun foreign language to have, something very unique? And study all of the hieroglyphs. And you could do a whole thing. You can find documentaries, you can find YouTube channels, you can do all of that. There's even some that I've seen where they will teach you some of the pronunciations of the hieroglyphs. So that would be a fun, unique one. And so what I had talked about a few minutes ago about the Freemasons bringing the obelisks to the United States, this book actually gets into the 3,000-year history or obsession of the land of pharaohs. So it'll get a little bit into that. And I made a note here. So yes, the Fontana moves the obelisks. So relocating the Egyptian obelisks. So there's that. And then you can also study the Freemasons and how they were obsessed with both ancient culture, specifically Egyptian culture, and Shakespeare. Freemasons believe that Shakespeare was a Freemason and all of his plays were Freemasonic code. Kid you not. So if you want to kind of dabble into that side of things, feel free. Look into that for yourself. For your fashion lover, so ancient Egyptian fashion and costuming. Oh, Fuff. Oh, my kitty. She got into a kitty fight with one of our other cats, and I just saw her for the first time. Her eyes all puffy. But isn't that nice? Isn't that pretty? See if your child could actually recreate that. Oh, there's some tatas there, sorry. So be on the lookout for tatas. So ancient God speak. Again, religion studies. If that's something you're okay with, here's a book dedicated solely to that for ancient Egypt. An ancient Egyptian drawing book. Goes into how you start it and how you can color it. You could use that for any age. I'm taking that into the art of ancient Egypt. So learn to draw some while also studying it. And if you have a museum in your area, most museums will have a small, landslide, will have a small Egyptian artifact section in their collections, typically the larger cities will. And so, food of ancient Egypt. All right, my loves, I think that's enough for Egypt. We are going to take a little side jaunt because I have this pile closer to me than another pile. We are going to get into just ancient mythology. And so my notes for this one, you could do a 1-year elective study for credits on ancient myths or myths from around the world. So I have a Hawaiian myths book, Norse myths. You can do American myths and folklore. You could do Eastern Asian, you can do Celtic, Greco-Roman, Egyptian, Persian. You can add in South American if you want, but I will warn you, I have seen a book of world myths. I got it from the library. It was a big one. I'll show you the condensed version here that only goes into part of the globe. But the ones that have the South American and Polynesian myths, they're very creepy. So if your children are sensitive to that and you as a family are very against false gods and demons, you will absolutely want to stay away from South American, African, and Polynesian myth and folklore, because some of those photos can be a little harsh and jarring. This is a fun book that my daughter has read so many times. We first found it at our library. She read it so much that I decided just to buy our own. And keeping with that same theme, Star Stories. And this is Constellation Tales from Around the World. This was the one I was talking about, where if you get the expanded edition, it'll get into myths from everywhere in the world. And if you're okay with it, that's fine. I'm just giving you a warning because some people may not like that. But this is just for Greece, Rome, Norse, and Celtic gods. And it's the same author, I believe, that does the A to Z for the world mythology. Egyptian mythology. Greek mythology. And that can be a full credit on its own. Okay, now let's dive into Roman history. Again, Demi, love her books. So you can see continuity with all of the illustrations and her personal art style. For my Catholics, St. Valentine. Pompeii, can't have Roman history without Pompeii. More Pompeii. You can find YouTube, lots of YouTube. There's photos that will circulate periodically from, I don't know if they're Smithsonian, but I've seen some when I used to be on Facebook, and it was little toddler footprints going through the ashes that were, what is it, like mummified, where they turn into the actual cast, and that just, it made me cry. I think my son was just born, and I saw all the baby feet, and I couldn't, I lost it. So you can find those types of pictures. And this goes into the history of volcanoes, 25,000 year history. So if you are a young Earth, you might want to adjust the timeline. But it goes into the history of exploding and what happens after a volcano erupts. So that's pretty fun. I survived Pompeii. Another one of those you choose interactives, but for Rome. Now this is a series that can get a little macabre, grotesque. So it depends on what kind of a family you are and what kind of a child you have. I let my oldest one read that just because this kid either wants to be a nurse midwife or, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's looked into not being a mortician, a forensic pathologist. There's just all sorts of stuff this kid is interested in that. It's like, ugh. But they have one for Dracula, all sorts of them. So here's your Alexander the Great version. If you've seen Childhood of Famous Americans, this series is Childhood of Famous Americans, but globally. And this is my personal copy. Your library may or may not have that. A short history for ancient Rome. And it's looks like a pretty quick read. Quick as in like a few weeks, depending on how much you assigned. The 12 Caesars. More Pompeii, but if you want to do chapter book. Oh, dangly bits on that man there, so be careful. Have to be careful with all them ancient Greeks and Romans. They like their exposure. The Lost City of Alexandria. This is a big one. That would be a fun read. Okay, now let's get into ancient Greeks. We have, of course, Homer. You can read Homer. You can read ancient Greek plays. This one's my copy, but it came from the library. The Trojan War. Math. Oh, this is Pompeii. What did I do here? Oh, I got some of my Romans and some of my Greeks all mixed up. Uh-oh. Sorry, y'all. Okay, I'll give you a couple more of the Roman. So many books, I forgot what I was doing. Okay, now we're getting back into Greek. Let me put those over there. Those are mine. Sorry. The Midas Touch. Perseus. Picture book. Some of the pictures, though, I wouldn't recommend for young. I would say upper elementary at a minimum for this. Because we're talking about Medusa and how he took care of that problem. Okay. So the Trojan horse. Seriously? You know what? We're just going to... No, I'm not doing that. Us-born Greeks. Have them build the Trojan horse. I saw a short just in the last week where a couple of college kids built a Trojan horse to sneak themselves and their friends and their snacks into a movie theater. And when they just about got to opening the door for getting into their particular theater, they fell over, they fell out, all of their stuff fell out, and security removed them. So you can look at that. Cooking with ancient Greece. Feta cheese. Make a Greek girl swoon. So getting into your Olympians. And you can take that as a study too. You can do a year-long study on just how the history of the Olympics. You can get into all of the famous Olympians. You can get into how the Olympic Games have changed in the last 100 years, especially with gymnastics and ice skating, all of the events that you're no longer allowed to do, all of the tricks that are considered illegal because they're too dangerous. You could get into the religious aspect of all of the opening ceremonies, if you catch my drift. You can do all sorts of stuff with that. Here's the history of ancient Greece, the Smithsonian book. So consider it like an encyclopedia just for ancient Greece. You can get into the Spartans. You can get into, there's the Steen of the Ep with the Spartans because they're gross, especially when you're talking about like the 300. And Spartan history, they took the young boys from their families and brought them in to train them up in the way that they should go for warriors. And as a part of that, they were a part of that whole Steen thing. And you can look at the symbols, especially through Greek mythology, and how they appear. That Greek book just went sliding on the floor, sorry. How those symbols appear throughout our US government, on our money, on our buildings. And if you research specifically what those symbols are, they lead you to that sort of Steen-ish connection everywhere. So if you want to take that route, you can do that, or just as a mom-only sort of study, you can do that too. Here's your inside a Greek temple. Science in Ancient Greece. And again, a chapter book on the history of, well, let me get the author for you, on the Olympics. And this will be general biblical history for those of you that want it. So there's going to be Catholic in here, and there's going to be general Christianity. This was at my library, so if my library can get it, maybe yours can too. But there are a lot of saints, even if you aren't a person that believes in saints, you can at least study them from a biographical perspective. We have several. Let's see. We have Saint Anne, Saint Joseph, John the Baptist, Saint James the Greater, Saint Luke, Saint Ignatius, Saint Damien, Saint Anthony of Egypt, Saint Monica and Augustine, So St. Augustine is a doctor of the church. So you can look into him, St. Benedict, St. Genevieve. Lots of saints you can add for your ancient studies. If you're looking for a fun picture Bible book for your children, Tommy DePaulo. This is my personal collection, but maybe you can find something like that. It's beautiful. This is also my personal collection, but if you're looking for something fun, graphic novel of the Bible. For littles, Counting on Faith. So it goes through the 10 Commandments and counting the 10 Commandments. Most of these books are going to be my collection, but maybe your library has them. The 12 Apostles. So I'll give you the author. Can't have Christ without Our Lady. So this goes through her wardrobe of all of the apparitions and what her clothes look like in every apparition. And again, Our Lady from Demi. If you didn't know, Demi is a Catholic author. Not traditional Catholic, but she has some Catholic leanings still. Mary, Mother of All. Now this will be a secular one, so just be mindful. Here are some saints chapter books that you could do. St. Helen of the True Cross. She was the one that found the cross that Christ was crucified on. St. Paul the Apostle. These are the Mary Fabian Wyandotte collection, if I could spit that out. King David and his songs. And then graphic novel of things like Luke. Bible does not have to be boring. And this is a note. You could add this for high school. Add it to do an honors world religions or an honors religion course. And you can make this so that you compare and contrast Christianity from a secular worldview to a Christian worldview. This is a secular history book about the Bible, the history of the Bible. So I give that to you as a warning, but it's an idea. And it's from National Geographic. Oh my gosh. We're an hour and 3 minutes in. Oh, and I almost had another book slide. I have so many books. I have book slides everywhere. My entire couch and living room is full. So after this long video, please like, subscribe, and share. If you know anybody that's looking for an Ancients book list, Facebook, social media, friends, anybody, your homeschool group, please share this. This was a lot of work. This was a labor of love. I had a lot of fun. I hope you find some good selections in here. I hope it helps your children. I hope it helps you to see that you don't have to buy Charlotte Mason or classical or any other curriculum. You can educate your children with a library card, and you can get a very substantial, significant, in-depth education with just your library card and a little bit of patience. If you've got any questions, concerns, any more requests, get them down below. And again, like, subscribe, and share. I'll see you in the next one.